knows where we are going, but we know we will get there. We will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will get there. We are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know we will get there.
We know we will get there. Ashefo ye mamu nyina akwa aba eba Abrokyiremu Nse3M so aye debremu e wo Richmond Media ye da mase sene amosi aso dwumadie yi mu yenim se mra ne so ye no na mu nyina ama ye krado amo twen ye da mase se mudi anigye aso dwumadie yi mu ama na ekoso mami ti
yes
na ene so ya sa baby mu
yes kitwa
e na wo ka kira hwefo ne atiefo nyina
yo chia adofo nyina ye da mase samaje bre na mo hwe ye Abrokyiremu Nsem Abrokyiremu hadie enya asem kitwa ye kanso ye wie ye do obi ase tu ye sese obi abefre ni nua na onu so befre obi na obeka se Nanayere ni Maame ti ya sa aka ye hu biem enne ye wa hanu mo se be dwumadie no ye san we ye sister ba ko a onu so ba no aba be kire de last week ye kan ye no e kwan ya ye nu ye mu bi ye be fa so enya contact se ba se ye hwere ye ma nti ene frɛ wo nua bi na kwasu frɛ obi na share na mon click adoma no subscribe ehia pa because se wa subscribe a program bi e be ba reach mo bia no ye share ma okra wa be ba so live ti e da masise mo nya mra ma ye Nanayere
yo mami ti mi so me eda ase ahwefo ye da mase bebre enne ye dwumadie eye top connect omo na aso yase a de dwumadie yi brew obi bo ebusa se top connect de ene den eye baabi a wo pese odi sika emma ne Ghana anase baabi afa na wo wiase mu hanyina mesre so odi befa top connect so omo ni fee bia omo charge fee bia omo rate ni so wo soro enu ti mesre se won sign up to top connect abomodi ansa wo be sign up to top connect na odo sika amana kodru bokon so amount esanse wo de fast wa pepepe na akwa kodru ye dahwefo nyina ase sene ya Maame ti edikan aka no last week ye dwendwene ye mofra ho eni kwan a social services for bema eya na eha abusua edi ntawontawa die ba enu ntia ye hye mobo si ebe peye nua bi a wasua die e wo sa de ne ho ani dwuma a odi anu no obeba beboa yen no wa kyerɛkyerɛ yen kwan a ye befa so a because e hye ase a wonhu obehu na afa de wo mai akodi abansem obi busa sent ye mani kra akodi abansem a yen sabetimi akon mu biem obi busai say oba bi giginem se me nko na mpese me hwe me ma enu to mpese me be ma ne kra benya access to mofra na enu so ekwan be na obefa so a be ma no so betimi anya contact anase wanya access to ne ma no enu ti ma miti se nka be ma me kwan a enka ma me introduce ye sister ye guest yi na ye ma ne kwan no ne ye ni nkomo
Nanayere mpacho kwanda ho.
Okay. And today we have Chanti Simpson joining us. Chanti is a manager at the Orchards. Orchards is a parenting assessment unit. And to send a kind of you'll be our name and more fra assembly social services here. Onim hu dwumadie pa no ani ade a oye. Chanti is a facilitator from Freedom Program and also parenting assessment. We have Chanti joining us today. She is going to help us to have more understanding about children and social services, how we will be able to get access to our children. Sometimes when we get or we have our children removed, most parents, thought that they might not be able to get access to their children. Today we have Chanti here to talk to us more about it and how we will be able to get our children back. So Chanti, welcome to Abrokyiremu Nse3M on Richmond Media.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for also accepting our invitation to come and talk to us today. So Chanti, we've already talked behind, and so now I will leave everything for you. All that we want to know is how does it start? Because before a child will be removed from a family, it always starts from somewhere. So if you can let us know, how does it start? Is it just straightforward for a child just to be removed, or something happened before a child is removed from parents? And if a child is removed, what can the family do to have their child back?
Okay, so the court proceedings are a long and quite drawn out process. It's not a quick process, and nothing happens very fast. So there's a timescale for children who are in court proceedings. So if a practitioner has any concerns about a child's welfare, they may make a referral to a social worker or to social services. Social services have to acknowledge receipt of the referral and decide on the next course of action. So usually what they would do is they would speak with their management and they would see if it meets a threshold for any intervention. Then the next step, they would do an initial assessment, which has to be completed within 7 days. And in the initial assessment, they may visit the family, they may speak to different people around and see what the concerns are, and deem if the child is in need or if there's any other action that can be taken to prevent the child being in need. So in those cases, they may suggest that families attend children's centres or they attend any community-based support so that they don't end up having themselves in a situation where they are classed as a child in need or a child in need of protection.
So Chanti, before you proceed, where does it start before it gets to the court proceedings? Where does it usually start? Because I know it will start from somewhere before it will lead into the court proceedings. So what does the family usually do?
That is pre-court proceedings. So all of this happens before you are in the court arena. So if they have a concern, then they will do an initial assessment.
So
and the initial
have that concern. Where does the concern come from? Yeah, that's why we want you to.
It depends on the nature. So it could be some health visitors raise concerns. Sometimes the police raise concerns. Sometimes it's education. So the school may have seen something that they are concerned about and make a referral to social services. It could be that a anonymous person has made a call to social services and said, I have a concern about this child, and they have to then initiate a visit and check on the child's welfare and see if they are safe at that moment in time. So when the referral comes through to social services, they have to first meet with management to see if it is something that can be enacted on. And then if it is, then they'll do an initial assessment, which has to be completed within 7 days. So all of this happens before court proceedings. So if the child is in need, then there'll be a provision or resources. They may say you should go to different community-based activities, and what they're doing is they're actually getting other people to watch over the family. So I know there's not many left, but Sure Start used to be one of those services. So they would have lots of different practitioners within Sure Start children's centres who would watch over the family and offer different support. If they feel that actually this is not enough and urgent action needs to be taken, there'll be a strategy meeting where they'll have a discussion to see whether or not they will have a section 47, which is when they are feeling that actually this concern is so great that the children need to be removed to keep them safe. before it enters court proceedings, there are different processes and different steps. So I would say the best way of preventing any further escalation is to work with services in the early steps. It's a lot of the times easier said than done, and many people fear social services, so actually straight away they're on the back foot. They don't really want to engage. They take everything quite literal and quite offensively, so it creates that barrier between a good working relationship. In those circumstances, what's usually said by the local authority or by a social worker who's carrying out initial assessment is that the parent isn't working or engaging with professionals. And if that's felt, then there'll be more fear as to how you would actually safeguard your child if you're not willing to work with professionals. When it does get to section 47, if a court deems that actually this child isn't safe, it can lead to the removal of the child. It can lead to what I do as a living, which would be when the court issues an interim care order, which means that the local authority have part responsibility of the child. And it can lead to parenting assessments both in the community and in residential placements. And inevitably, a decision is made at the end of this process as to whether or not the parent is able to meet the child's needs with support or without support.
Oh, okay. So with the concerns, I think you mentioned about the police, teachers, and maybe neighbors. Can a child also report that, or I'm experienced? Can a child do that themselves? Or...
Absolutely. And what we're seeing now in schools, especially primary schools, is there's a lot of talking taking place. So children are very aware of their rights. They're made aware of their rights, and they will have assemblies that happen in school. They'll come home with flyers. I'm not sure if anyone's ever seen their child come home with a flyer. It has different numbers from NSPCC on who to contact, and it's kind of drummed into them, because a lot of the time there is abuse within the home and the child does not have anyone that they can talk to. If the people who take care of you and who look after you are the ones who you're most afraid of, then it is unlikely that you're going to be able to escape that situation if you don't have knowledge of who you can go to. So children absolutely can make the referrals themselves, and it could be that actually as they're among their schoolmates, someone else may go home and they may report it to their parents, and their parents may make a notification to the local authority. A lot of the time schools pick up on things such as if the child's coming in an unkempt state, so they're not looking very clean or tidy, they're very tired throughout the sessions, they are aggressive in their behavior, or they're more isolated in their behavior, they pick up on a lot of over-sexualized behavior, and all of these concerns would mean that prior to social services even being called, they're under a looking glass. There's lots of professionals watching these children, and they will get in pastoral teams to support them as well.
Okay, so if a child is removed, is there a chance that a family can get their child back? And what is the process?
Absolutely.
What is the process?
Absolutely. Threshold, and a lot of people don't realize this, threshold for removal is really high. It's not something that's easily done. It's not something that the courts like to do, because at the end of the day, the decision is with the judge. So everyone presents their evidence. Social workers will make statements. There will be a children's guardian involved. They will also make their own statement. The parents' legal, if it's two parents, they both have their own legal. They will make statements on behalf of the parents. And it's a very hard process. And there are case management hearings. There are issues resolution hearings, and there are final hearings. So there is plenty of opportunity to address any of the concerns and really work with the process. If a child has been placed in care, there will be a list of concerns stated on the social work statements. If you really want to work with the process, you have to look at those concerns, show insight and understanding into them, and address them. It's not enough to acknowledge them. There's no point in fighting them. The concerns cannot be stated without evidence. So if there is a concern and you love your child, you have to work with the process to get them back. And it's very difficult, and sometimes we can feel that it's unjust, and sometimes we can feel that actually this isn't true. But when you're in a court arena, everything is evidence-based. So you have to be able to provide your evidence, and you have to be able to work with different professionals, regardless of your feelings. It's not impossible, and in our line of work, we see it happen. Parents have completed assessments, they have left with their children. Previous children that have been removed, they have done a successful assessment, they have worked on the matters that have been raised, they have gone through supervision orders and been able to be out of proceedings, and they've gone back for children that had previously been removed from them. So it's absolutely possible.
Okay. Yeah. Please, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
If a child is removed, how long will it take for a family to get that child back?
There's no set time scale. So if the child has been removed and they're out of court proceedings, the family have to work, and the family have to really work hard to prove that actually every decision that was made in court needs to be overturned. So they would have to have a very long period of stability, depending on what the concern was, and they would have to apply to courts themselves to try and get guardianship back of their child. So it's not a quick process if you've been through a final hearing already, but it is possible.
So where do they usually take the children to? Do they take the children to family, or they just take the children away?
So what happens in proceedings is, alongside the assessment of a parent, there will be parallel planning. That's the term that we use, parallel planning. So that means option A is the parent. Can this parent care for this child with our support or without our support? Are they able to do it themselves? If they're not able to do it, is there a viable family member or person in that parent's life who can care for the child? If there's not a viable family member, then they look towards fostering and adoption. Viability assessments are carried out, and the parent would put forward a person who they deem to be suitable and fit to look after a child. It has to be someone in their lives who are not wrapped up in with any substance misuse, with any domestic abuse. It has to be someone of good standing who is not involved in many different standings in life, and they have to make sure that actually, if they're putting this person up, this person is going to do what's in the child's best interests. What sometimes works against parents is when they put up a friend or a family member who aren't going to stick to what the local authority have said. So for example, if they have said you're not allowed to have unsupervised contact with your child without this person present, that's something that the friend or family member who you put forward for a viability assessment has to be able to uphold. Otherwise, if the local authority finds out, they would say that person is not safeguarding the child, and they would remove the child from their care. If the child is in the care of the family, it's much easier to keep in contact with them. A lot of the time, the local authority won't affect things too much, as long as the parent does not pose a risk of imminent harm, or if the person who's been put in place is someone who's able to act as an effective protective factor.
Oh, so who usually organize the contact? Is it the family themselves, or is the local authority when the child is removed?
So it's usually the local authority, unless it's been deemed otherwise. So if the child has been removed from the parent and they are placed with a family member, for example, they're placed with their gran. If there is set contact days because they feel that the parent is high risk, then that has to be abided with. If they feel that actually the parent wasn't able to do it on their own, with the support of grandparent or with the grandparent caring for the child, they're able to have some contact, but it must be supervised. So it depends on each person's situation.
Oh, okay. So what happens if a parent breach their contact, like maybe because of work they are not able to maintain their times of contact? Do they still get the chance, or they will be stopped seeing the child?
This is a thing that's quite difficult for many cases. So if contact has been given, a normal example, 6 times a year, if the child is in foster care, they may say 6 times a year and include birthdays and Christmases. If the parent is consistently not attending the contact, it will be reduced. If there are working matters then you can ask the parent, can ask the local authority that contact be changed to suit that pattern. However, it must be also in line with the child's best interests. They wouldn't really accept last minute changes because of work, because actually when a child has been separated from their parent and they know contact day is going to be, a last minute change would really disrupt that child, because they've faced that loss. They're no longer with you. They look forward to seeing you. So any sudden changes or any unplanned changes would really be quite upsetting and traumatic for the child.
Does this happen to only African?
My family is a family that foster. We've been in that situation countless times, actually. So we've had children in our care who've been absolutely desperate to have contact, and when contact comes around, sometimes the parents are not attending, and their behavior really changes when they come back to the home. They're emotionally distressed. They don't know how to behave. We then see really challenging behavior. We then see a lot of tears. It affects their schooling. So it's really important, if contact has been granted, that it's consistent.
Chanti, I think Techua asked a question. She asked, does it happen to only African people, or it doesn't matter your race?
No. As you would be able to see, Helena, actually, children are well, in terms of race, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If a child is at risk of harm, then that child will be placed in care. If they are not able to ensure the safety of the child in the parent's care, they will be removed into care, and that is regardless of race.
But because, Chanti, the way Africans, the way we talk, sometimes it's just a simple conversation, but maybe your neighbor will take it in a different way. That, oh, I've been hearing this mom or this dad always screaming on their children. So how can that also be put in or investigated or being recognized? Because if our culture too is being recognized, as we have to respect everyone's culture, then the way we speak too has to put into consideration as well. Or what do you think?
Sorry, you're cutting out a bit, but I did hear the majority of what you were trying to say. Okay. So I agree. And what we call it is anti-racist social work practice and anti-discriminatory practice. We're having to move into a way where we're accepting the different cultures of people who we have in this country. We are a multicultural country, and we need to recognize different cultures and how they interact. I'm from a mixed background. I have Jamaican and Grenadian parents, and also Irish in my family. And you will hear everyone shouting, but they're not shouting in an aggressive tone. It's just our way of speaking. We're very loud people, and it can be misinterpreted. And even some of the language used can be misinterpreted. But it's about working with the process. If we feel that our worker does not understand our needs, our social worker, or whoever may be working with us, or if they're coming out to do an assessment, we can explain that to them. It's about educating professionals moving forward, because I won't pretend that there is no racism in social work. There is. However, it's not a reason not to work with the process. There's racism throughout all walks of life, but we don't give up. We educate when we try to move on, and we help each other through a process. I think we would be able to see, Helena, actually, that a lot of social workers are from many different backgrounds. So I wouldn't say it's an overall white profession. It's really quite cultured, and I think that helps the process as well, because it means that more people are going to gain an understanding, whether they like it or not, of different cultures.
Yeah. So because let me use Ghana as an example, because that's where we are from. Because what we do is we train children so that when they grow, they'll be able to at least know how to do house chores. You understand? So maybe washing utensils, cleaning up, even cooking. You understand? But I think with here, they would think that maybe you are putting too much pressure. You are not even allowing the child to study or something. So how can we marry these two? If we want to practice our culture and also not to, get into trouble. So does it mean that we just have to leave the children, just be anyhow? Or we can still incorporate that into training our children?
I think it's really important that if you were to move into a country, if you were to become part of another culture, then you have to recognize the culture that you're becoming part of. So if we were to go to a Middle Eastern country, we couldn't just impart our ways in that country. A lot of the time we would face criminal proceedings if we did so. So I think it is important to recognize the culture of which we live in. And it's also important at the same time to keep our own. We need to ensure that we're keeping our own identity and instilling that in our children. So I absolutely agree, and I understand that sometimes that can come across too much, but I don't see a reason why a child can't still have a childhood and still learn those good values and morals and simple tasks within the home. There's no reason they can't have the best of both worlds.
Okay. Shanti, give us a few minutes. Let's talk to our audience as well. We will get back to you soon. Maame,
No one.
Shanti akasa bebre. Na waka bibi sesi a se e wo se ekro bi a obekoso no. E wo se we ye de omo ye. And no na last week so obeka ya ye nua jamfi ebeka ye no. Enu nti no e ma ye mfa nhye tiri se because ye de Africa nti no. Enu an ye be ye. Wo ye sad you end up losing your child. Ahwe for misremo. You was Shanti wo yen chen ha oni yen edin komo. Me stress all questions are. Obetimi afre a studio number no. So when timi amfre so kra, obetimi e de wo comment and answer wo questions so the about wo comment section ho ye be kan amount. Mami ti mami kwan na am say nya few comments bi na yen read ma adofo hu say omo comments a omo de ba no so ye ni eje ho. Ene ye nua Ralph Adams e was so Ralph say Abrokyirehemaa, you are looking very nice today. Hey Ralph, me da see. Na chese de bia me looking nice so Ralph me boa me da see. Why ya de nyame enshraw. And na ye nua ba Esther asarbedi akon. O see good. I made it for today program. Mami today na oka Esther.
Da see. Koso ane share mo obi. No bi su metie bi nene. Yeah, topic ni very interesting. Beboa ye nyina nso.
Yeah, that's Esther. And a Kings, or say something wrong with the studio audio. Mestre say Kings, say audio na ye ya. Na was sign abetro atu ho amaye. And amamiti. Yeah, yes, rewa. Tino say sound no and I say say aye ya yes, but more than abetro etu ho maye. Thumbs up, mamiti. Oh, mamiti, you made it. Yeah, what's your CEO? Mami, yeah, Yami, Yampa. Oh, and I will Yaubonsu. I'll say hello, beautiful queens of modern airwaves. Keep up the good work. More grace to your elbows. Hey, where do I my insurance? Mami, then I'll walk out. Oh. Bema ya onyami enshraw ye da say. And na Ohima Jenkins. I'm say yeah mami o. Mama Esther Drew how say you girls are really doing a great job. Good job and a good job. Hey, mami
Mama Esther.
Then I walk out.
Nyami enshraw. Koswa ne share mo bi. No bi so share mo bi. No bi ametie bi na topic no. Ebeboa ye nyina especially. Ye free obi man so aba ha. You see, yes, I better to money, dear. The lady Nakano. Any I experience be a yansam ketua. Tina was a net program near Coswa share money co. No beer tea be near Quaya. Yanni a mano a bet now Krumuha, Yenya by ansem.
Okay, back to you, Shanti. So, Shanti, if
Richmore Radio,
if a wife decide, to prevent that, maybe there's a marriage breakdown or family breakdown. So if a wife decides to take, custody, without maybe the court giving her the full right. So if just a wife decide at all, I'm looking after the child, so I don't want the dad to have access. Is there a way that the dad can get access to the children if a woman is preventing him from seeing the children?
Yes, hi. You're still cutting out a little bit, but I did manage to hear what you were saying. So, if a parent has stopped the contact.
No, not that. I mean, if there's a family breakdown, like maybe a relationship breakdown, like divorce or separation, and maybe the wife has decided to take custody, like, because women's right, so the wife will say that, I don't want the dad to get access to the children. What should the dad do?
The father should take her to court. Absolutely take her to court. And there's actually a number of different male agencies that you can go through to look at your rights. The father has a right. If he's on the birth certificate, the right is already there because you are a named person. You are a named parent on the birth certificate. And you can argue that actually the mother's refusal to allow contact will show the court that how she is not child focused. She is not thinking of their child's best interest, and she's inconsistent with the child's best interest. The law requires family courts to focus on custody decisions on a child's best interest. So when a father wants full custody of his child, because the mother withhold custody, he has a right to then fight for that also. They can look at child arrangement orders, and that would look at first having a mediation process. So the mother and father may have to meet. They may have to decide what days the child would be at each parent's home. But the father has a right to custody. He just has to be able to show, as will the mother, that they have a space for the child to go, that they're able to meet the child's needs, and that nothing in their life will prevent them from being able to keep those needs and meet those needs consistently. So it shouldn't stop a father. If there are no concerns that the mother can use against them, so for example, domestic abuse or any anger, drugs or alcohol, anything that they can use against them, then they have equal rights. And they should go for a child arrangement order.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
How old can a child decide she or he don't want to speak to the parents? Maybe separation, mom have the children, and the child can say, I don't want to see my dad. How old? Is there any age between that they can do that?
Well, they would meet. There's not really an age to it. So if the child was to decide that they didn't want to see either parent, but the other parent wanted that contact to happen and they were going through court proceedings, what would happen is a guardian could speak to the child. So, for example, someone from an organization called CAFCAS could speak to the child and see what's in their best interest, and they would take into account why the child feels this way. It's all about the child's interest. So if they have a very valid reason, if they said, I'm scared of this parent, or I don't like that this parent does this, if it's reasonable, they will facilitate what the child is asking. If it's unreasonable, they'll look at a different way, a mediation way, to help support and develop that relationship back with the parent that they no longer want to see.
Oh, okay. So let's say that maybe because there are some children that they are naturally stubborn. Their behavior got nothing to do with their parents. So if there's a child like that, maybe it's just from peer pressure, they are copying from their friends at school. So their behavior got nothing to do with their parents. Would that also lead to a child being removed? Or can a parent also report a child to social services that, I can't manage this child and I want the child to be removed? Can a parent also initiate that?
Absolutely. So parents aren't always to blame. We're not always to blame. And actually, sometimes there is something going on for the child. We are influenced by so many different things in our life. It could be social media. It could be our peers. So many things can influence a child and their behavior and raise concerns with the local authority. It's not always the fault of the parent. It's not always the upbringing of the parent. However, parents need to work together to identify actually how can we, if you're together in a relationship or if you're separated, how can we support this child? If they cannot care for the child, then they can place the child in care. They can sign a Section 20 and hand the child over into care services so that they can get the support that their parent feels they're not able to offer.
So would that not go against the parents? That they will say that, they are not good parents because they don't have the parenting skills. Would that not go against them if a parent, they are struggling to manage their children?
No, not necessarily. It depends on the situation. So sometimes parents place their child into care because actually they have very high level of needs. They may be on the spectrum and they're not able to manage. It could be to their own health. It could be because they have other children who are at risk. It's not a mark against them that they're not able to manage that child. If the local authority may offer support, But if the support is not enough, sometimes the best thing that we can do is provide the child with a safe and stable home. That can't go against you for putting your child's best interests at highest priority.
Okay. So when the children they are removed and maybe the fosters where they take the children to, if they don't have like let's say the heritage or the background like where the child is from, does it affect their growing process? Because I think it's right for every child at least to know where they are from, their roots. So if they are taken away from their parents, and do they really look for where the child will feel comfortable? Because maybe the food, for instance, where when they were living with their parent, maybe they were eating their like let's say their native food, so they are used to that, and all of a sudden they are removed from their parents. So where they are taking them, do they really consider that, or it doesn't matter? They just move them to any foster.
It does matter, and the first point of call when they're doing placing is to look for a household which can meet the child's needs. If they are Muslim, they would look for a family who practice Islam and they're able to take them to mosque. They would look for, if a child is of a certain race, they would try to pair as best as they can. But unfortunately, there aren't always carers available that match that need. So in crisis times, they do have to place the child with a family who can keep them safe. Another personal example, again, my family foster, and we're of mixed heritage, but my mum was a white woman, and sometimes we had black children placed in our care. That was absolutely fine because she's grown up in a culture where actually she's been with black people. My dad is black. She has all mixed race children. I was able to do their hair. We are Caribbean, we cook Caribbean food. It was never an issue, but I think it's really important that the child's culture is able to be embraced. They're able to learn, they're able to develop within that household. Otherwise, they're not going to know themselves. They're not going to have a true sense of identity.
Okay. Yeah, let's go back to our listeners. We will get back to you, Chanti. Thank you. Mamiti, again, you catch the Ghana for you to come about bridge, because I say information is very deep. Watch the ancient say you perceive a trial and KBI, you say beer, there's a leeway beer. But I say once I walk from honey dear. And I ma chrome has any dance so. A chain ye Ghana, ye one. It's answers a brony case about fry vulnerable. No, you're vulnerable. And to quite be or be faswa or be making sure say a colony is safe, no, and no, and now brony ebe faso. And you know, yeah, you say. Ye pair bustiane de misremo, and yes, I walk keke. Mama yen share ya sitna mu ye kasa ye be ye bia because I know Chanti kind sabofrani ya bofraboni krana. Obetimi de wako to trouble wana mamiti.
Na ye no kre but kakra mekani say enye easy ema yen parents especially obani okunu ekwa adwuma ba ni eja nkola no.
Yeah.
No also pick friends from outside and school. And when I na di way in ba no, but say ba nana enye easy, but like you said, nebi o honso a who cry say ba aklani ko school na wa brain teacher na pick it from there. A report to wo kwa fa ba yesi untumi mfa no because you afraid social service amount or maybe impu akola na akoti ahwe one ne nam fufu odi agro no akọ school na teacher hu a little bit of mark o musaw ofusa ne maame na abo no so mba ye coach and na ha adwene ba mesre parents nyina empa ibo if say ye coach no baby ye free ba no ati ane ye shout mom de but
eno ne adijiji ani mamiti wo say wo tie mu frɛ wo ba na wani age eno na kyerɛ sɛ wo ye parent o.
Tie mu fra ye culture no it said your kan ye no uko roma ye de omo ye be sere se ye nyina ye be sua eno ne nkyerɛ sɛ wo ye soft anase kasa boko efa kyerɛ wo ma but ye wo kwan a wo be ye de wo be ka and then omo wo bibi kura kromu akra so omo ji oba na ye se nkase wa bon but asa wo tia no kakre ohun nti na enye bibi aba ya na ye hu ehune say stress ya ukokra na ya free social service for namawa ehu ebeto so no eno kra no sa change bibia but krom wan so ebrewa ha tini nyina ne yebesire nyame so omo aye parents yi ene matitie ni asre about time for na se bema no ha adwene kakra bi aye pam no nko antumi ntiteba enkola ni hie nipa mienu de papa beye no wo maame no ntumi nye de maame no beye no papa no so ntumi nye unless say bi akola na di 18 obetumi a make decision for himself and na me busa ne say how long how old
I'm celebrating any person or bad hello Patrol, what about Richmond Media? So, I will Abrokyiremu Nse3M no. Me patrol what yenka.
hello
Me patrol what yenka. Me so jina so na yen connect to yen you know em say wakasa ne meye ti jina so mame.
Richmond Radio.
Me patrol what yenka.
Me patrol yeso nka.
Yo, me patrol obetimi abowudin no me yehu ba bia wo kasa efri.
Me patrol yefrem me Joanna me kasa sebo amod.
Oh, okay. Eni ye ma wakwa ba eba Abrokyiremu Nse3M yi so. Enwumre ye wo ye nua ba Chanti a wo kyerkyere ye kwan ya se ye ma efri ye nsa kodi social services a ye betimi afa so ama ye nsa aka wo mo. Anase dia ye betimi measures e betimi put in place. Say enkodru removal side no kra. So akwanya wo ho e de na wo ana wo question bi a wo efa ye dwumadie yi ho.
Yo, me da se. We de ye nua ba no akasa bebre da na se bebre wo de abraye. Na me pesa me make a few contribution kakra.
Me pacho kasa.
De mehu mfa nse adwuma kakra me ye no. Mehu fa edidifo ho. Me pacho we de me slamu fa nse me se me use edidifo e de aye an example. Let's say aya na ye seeking for help in them. Me join me a bit late kakra ba me hu here nua ba no can support and access services available de mayen. But edidifo per se and seeking for help. The urban part professional be who says Nebano there is an issue wa akola no no. On tiki o can not all deny because or just say e ni ni Rebecca say akola ni say. And see one thing about it from one says from the one e be wo akola no up to say akola be ya adult no. Obi abeko no obi o people record of akola no.
Okay.
And see so we make the appointment. Ye who say there is issue with akola no one ya pro se fa kwa ne bra wan fa nko ni nyina no no mo de tuo DNA sa nti se issue ba na se social services for help information oba hu se be hu se wo parents no kwa no enye very good
Okay.
ye betimi a ofa wo parental courses and before be ka se ompe o you okay and no ne niam a aya na pali go on mo ana se ye could this social for nsema na bia for against us. It is so be only a professional be ya de na se o hu bibi wo ba ho a ye forget to say obi be ka se me ba na ye bibi say so parenting skills enye no obi aka to say dia o fa course you know akuma pamu na kokotie de o mo ka no if it says minim say bi wo ho no mo a issue na ba ne kwa na social for hwehwe mu no o me hu maame no hu say o hia mo ano okọ family center for ho mo ma no in the course.
Okay.
It was passed through that course, which means our body who more deal will be more. But although on my over funny be on yet, it is a tano record anybody you will pin from my Afranibia, the Nimfa, Afrani family no one. Yes, she ever can come. It could do on my win. Once all can was a focus, evidence.
Yeah.
Internet for the more evidence, have visitors, the more evidence, the evidence, hereby the case is saying you don't listen to anybody.
Yeah.
It's at the end of the day, you need a big green shed again, a backward against you. It means to learn a miss them, the Casavineka, in your body and over. So will be powerful and also will be identify the need for the family now. Try to follow up. So that ya that to be no a dog one kasa. And also one could do a monster what media defend on.
Oh, yes, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Pa, na kasa mamiti. Yeah, wakasa. Shanti, we had the caller. And I think what that she was saying, she added to the points that you have already made. That whenever like our neighbors, identify something that this is what I've observed. We just always have to try and embrace it, than always ignoring for issues to escalate to where social services have to get involved. And I think it's a good point as well, isn't it? Because we all have to be our neighbors' watch, yeah. But some neighbors, they are not good. No. They will just report you straight.
They're not. We've got neighbors right now. My family have moved to Kent.
Okay.
And the neighbors here are very different. They're very different. So every now and again, I catch the one on the left peering through the fence at us, and I'm thinking, what now? What are we doing? Not all neighbors are good, but I can see and I can feel the damning of. They think, oh, what are they doing? What are they listening to? What is their music saying? How are they talking to the children? How are they acting? Mind your business sometimes. Yeah. If you don't understand the culture, educate yourself with it. And if you don't want to do that, then please mind your business.
Yeah. So Shanti, what advice will you give to a parent who is struggling, to manage their children? I'm not talking about financial side, but, training the children. Because I can see that because now these days social media and peer pressure, friends, it's very hard, very, very hard to, be on top or to be able to control children. So what advice, is there anywhere parents can go for training, anywhere parents can go for support?
Absolutely. My first piece of advice is be that child's greatest influence. They will grow and have so many different inputs from so many different backgrounds. Every child is from a different background, and when they're in school, they're congregating. Everyone is together. When they go out with their friends, when they go to youth club, you need to be that child's greatest influence as early as you can and instill all of your values in that child. When you give them that sense of morale and you teach them what is right and what is wrong, it's going to be easier for you as they grow. In regards to when a parent needs support, they have to ask for it. If you sit there and try to manage everything on your own, despite knowing that actually things are escalating and they're becoming too deep for me, then you're only going to sink deeper. You need to reach out. You need to look online. There are children's centres all around. If the child is a young child, there are children's centres, and within them, they'll have support groups. Online, there are countless support groups you can access for children with varying behavioural needs or children who are just quite difficult and you're struggling. There are things that you can access, and each person will have tried and tested a different way of working with their child that they find is actually a good way forward, and they may be able to make that suggestion and it might work for your child. Or you yourself can help others when you're talking and you even like this, even coming on your show now and talking, you're able to help one another. You're able to think, okay, this person's example of neighbours may be what I've experienced also. And then straight away, I'm not crazy. That's not something I'm going through alone. It is something that people are feeling as well. So I feel like talking is the best form of support that you can access because someone can help somewhere. You just have to look out for that support.
Okay. Yeah, let's go back to our listeners. We will come back to you. And Mamiti, I'm say your comments no me
Richmond Radio.
So be mami kwaya anka metimi akan. Yeah, ye nuaba Cynthia Goka. O say well done. E dey asem na wo ka.
Yeah, that's Cynthia nyame hira o. Koso a hwe ye ne share.
And na ye nua ba kon so on the one fani din ama initials F or say I've learned so much. Good show, ladies.
Yeah, that's you nyame hira o. Koso a na obi metie bi. Ye se ye betina Abrokyirehemaa de wo say ye die kro ne mrape na ye ma na mfiri yensa. Yeah, that's it.
Mamiti. Abrokyiremu
Nse3M.
Hey, ensem ni modu.
Nana baby Ghana no ye nya fo. Bibi but unya bakro mu ha na wo hu say yes. Hwe Ghana wo ko krom kra utumi de obeje obi. No problem. Debi. Obi be ma obe aduane. Bibi anya no su krom ha kra no.
You can't. Because I can't cram of friend no school cranas are colani okia. Teachers me report.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't know colani woki. Yeah. But Shanti, why is it an issue that when children go to school and they have key to their house, the teachers make fussy about that? Why? Why
That they have keys to their house?
Yeah. Because
that's not an issue. That's not an issue. Depending on the age of the child, they'll be worried that the child may be traveling alone. The teachers can access your records and they can see if it's a far distance and how far that child may have to travel. They may be concerned because on that travel, the child could be at risk of grooming, could be at risk of abduction. But it is a fact of life that actually childcare is very costly and people are having to work just to survive. The cost of living is up. I think sometimes professionals can be very strict and impose their values and their views. And actually, it's all worth a conversation. If they have an issue with it, get to the roots of what their issue is, talk to them and educate them. So I feel that that's where change actually comes. If someone doesn't know what it's like, and like you've said, sometimes children do have to travel home from school. Sometimes they have to be able to do a lot more adult things at a younger age. But actually, have the conversation and educate those professionals, because it's not an issue for a child to have these. You may come home, school, you may get home at the same time, and sometimes you may be delayed at work. We've all been there when sometimes someone taking over you is not on time and you get back a little bit later. If the child was waiting outside, that would be seen as a problem. So better yet, they let themselves in.
Okay. So that when you were talking, you made mention of guardian, because I know that we have the parents. So what part does the guardian play in the when a child is removed? Who are the guardians and what do they do?
So the guardian is the child's voice in court. So each parent will have a legal representative, but the child has their own voice. If we're looking at the child's best interest, it's important that someone represents their best interest. A guardian, if the child is of an old enough age where they're able to communicate, the guardian will meet with the child and they'll try to identify what it is that the child wants, what would make them happy, what would help them thrive. If the child is very young and they're a baby, they may use sentences like Ben may like, or Ben would like for his family to live together. Ben would like for there to be no arguments and for the parents to be able to provide a consistent and stable home environment. So a guardian is the child's voice and they make sure that their best interests are upheld. The guardians have a lot of power. Say pulls a lot of weight in court proceedings because they are speaking for the child.
Oh, so who appoints the guardian?
So to any case where there's a child involved, a guardian will be appointed by the courts.
Oh, so it's the court, not the local authority?
No, they're separate entities.
Okay. Hey.
They will work in line with one another.
Okay.
But they are separate.
So all these teams work together to come up with a final conclusion for where a child will have to be stayed finally.
So we all need a multidisciplinary approach. We all need to work together, but actually our observations may be very different. A social worker in frontline duties observation of a family may be very different to my observations as a social worker with a family in a residential setting. The guardian may have a different view. So actually, whilst we all work together to understand and try to interpret what's best for this family, we all have our individual statements and our individual reports to write. They don't always agree. We've had lots of cases where guardians feel that a different setting would be best for the parent than what the local authority have said.
Okay. Maame, a dear partner Abrokyirehemaa. And we told all these things, measures in place, a bon kwara ho ban. Na ye kro mu die ye ni bi, akola beni nam ho sa, aden. Enti empanyufo ni no mu nim ana se e ye de be ntia maame si.
Nana, omunim pa, omunim, yes omunim. Omunim, but ni nyina said ye, obi ti US awaka ne, the system is not working. E wo ye kro nim. Because Uche ye mofra wa Ghana any Abrokyirehemaa gabu ni so esopa ede na kromu ade yesi menya akola sei memo akola menye say ni nyina the same Ghana for na ye ba ye no ye be ye but obi ti Ghana onye den onye emfa ne ho ye wo social service for Ghana but I don't know so
I don't think say they know their job role.
Ghana any person na betisi akofa akola bia free ne maame nchen na government no kro wosika ye kofa na ode be hwe akola no for aduan ba kromu omo adaje minim say ya na kromu anso no aye busa ne mame say ya na ye dien yo omo be remove nkola na ho na omo kototo ne ma akase de mo omo nti akola asebe we ni wo fom kakra no fu say o se ne maame nto phone mana o maame se wonto okoho obenya phone ti no no so akola oya akola bone no oye more behavior ni bi aka ho say de be ya obeka ho but se me di mani bu for manana me nche bebre ni kakra me sume hu ni say most of enkola na ye gi wo mo free wo mo parents nsem no wo mo kra say more sin na nko e bi o ti ni parents
sorry Shanti, Mamiti has made a valid point that when children are removed they get spoiled. Is it true? Because they are always being pampered. They get everything that they want, even things that parents cannot afford for them. Yeah. They get it when they are being removed. Why is it like that? And if there is if they can do that, why can't they support families to give better things to their children than to remove them?
Yes, I wouldn't say spoiled, but actually, yes, sometimes when children are in care, they become accustomed to certain things, and that's because the local authority provides so they may provide a clothing allowance, which means that foster carer, if it's a foster carer from a local authority, may be able to buy clothing more regularly. It's not really fair, but it is the process, and it comes with the job title really. So sometimes a child in foster care may be very used to having devices, maybe having all the new iPads and iPhones, and then you may have another fostering family who actually don't have that. There are some fostering families who won't have TVs in bedrooms, and there's some that will insist on having TVs in bedrooms. It really is the foster carer. But I agree, sometimes there is more provided when the child is in care, which defeats the object of trying to support the family, because actually a lot of these things, if you're worried about a child's behavior, if you're worried about what the child's doing, if the child was supported in the family home more, then that wouldn't be a concern. A lot of the time children in foster care are able to go to different groups that necessarily you wouldn't have the access to, but actually because they're in foster care you have a carer's card, so you get a discount in different theme parks. You have a carer's card, so your cinema tickets might be cheaper. It is wrong, and I agree. I think someone said the system is broken. I agree, there are a lot of things that need to change. There is a lot more support that needs to be provided with the parents, but actually there's more cuts than anything else. So it is an area, it is a field that requires more finance. More money needs to be put into social work practice. Sometimes there can be the fear of social workers, and they become overzealous and they may remove more rather than offering that support in place whilst the family is with their parents. I think more does need to be done.
Okay. There's a nice comment here that I need to read to you. It's from Sir Richie. He said, a vulnerable child indeed. The Caribbean girl is good. Is she an attorney? Nice program, blessings. So I think he would like to know more about you. You did not introduce yourself. I was expecting you to do that. I know you have a lot. So he wants to know, are you an attorney?
I a bit. I play netball. I do play netball. I am quite a sporty person. I felt that your introduction of me was quite good, Helena, so I didn't add anything extra. But I am a social worker, and I have been for over 10 years. I have backgrounds in children and families. I have backgrounds in working with adults with learning disabilities and with physical disabilities. I have stepped out of frontline practice because I enjoy working with families, and I feel that a lot of the time social work practice can become a tick box exercise. So I'm someone who likes to really work with families and really kind of dig my heels in. I do a lot of work with families who are experiencing domestic abuse. So I do, as you said, the Freedom Program. So I work with people who are vulnerable and are survivors of domestic abuse, but I also work with perpetrators and try to support them to making changes to keep the family together. So that's a bit about me.
So you are very rich.
I wish I was an athlete. I wish.
You are very rich. Na Chanti akano. Eniema bebre ena oye. Say ba family dear. You are be juma oti asie ye. Wa ye ache. Na uba na we say you see conducting domestic violence programs, drugs abuse, mental, a whole lot. Enya asem kitwa kra. Nti say na usika say oh you good no no cray or you good and then so minim say ne nsema or dia brain ye nyina ye ni age ho. Enche bia ye de adwumadie no ebeba wiye. Enu nti so question bi a mesre say o de beba na me san kai mo say top connect omo na aso yasene a ye di say adwumadie ebre the reliable way a person di sika emani ekofia obetimi e de afaso on charge bibia de hia ni say we do sika ne befa ho abusuafo ensa ebeka sika no so musa beka no me na me ka chom amiti enye nkitinkiti bi o abusuafo ni boss o mu say yes yensa emuodu esanse won rate no eye high intimate so person di sika mani nko ade a fafa top connect so na abusuafo ensa ebeka
Nanayere obi bebusa say ebeye den ena opeso ye top connect awabeka ho.
Oh, when one is so be download the app no. We download the app na top connect. We download the and one say we deal with details no be bia be so. Etunya course so apesika pesa we send no. And one say we born papa na ko. Enti top connect the Mr. O pesa do sika kofia. Enfensa wo mo fafa top connect so. Na ebusianfo ensa ebeka. Ama dwumadie bia nso pesa o sika likodin so no. Ebeko akodi ni kama amount. Mami ti wo bibi kan san ya mashanti aka nensema etwa top connect
sana ye bie ye pronato ha ma obia ye hia sponsors Abrokyiremu nsem dwumadie enti obi a pesa ye wo advert ma obia une ye manager kasa ono be ye said ye wa ho odin betumi bibi kakra bi ne ya jew so pesa oba na be ye makeup sa me ne Nanayere mo hwe ahofe ya ye disie ya
musa
ye ready for oba bia pesa opamata de ye hye ya ye ready ye nso ye bebo wadwuma ne ho so dawura ama wo enye ye nko a richmo ye di dwuma bebre oba sport a ye wo ho efie mu nsem ye wo ho health ye wo ho nti ye be sre adofo se mo subscribe se wo subscribe a dwumadie bi ebeba richmo bia no ye nhye ekra na aletew na wankasa wa ye den watumi abeka abusuakuo ni ho ye do bia ase ye sresa mo bekoso a ahye na da ne da mo beba ne ani mo bedi dwuma no efse munni ho a ye nso ye ni ho Nanayere
yo
betumi aka no
mate mamiti nyame insha wa ya de me hu say yenua Monica Opon o say I'm enjoying the program e dey na wo ka che Monica
nyame nshira o koso a na enjoy na frɛ obi na ono so ma enjoy bi ye da se
abusua na ekosoro enso ye subscription no e wo for mesre se won subscribe ya but modern ya so be subscribe to Richmond Media se ne be ya di dwumadie ni beto hwa obenya alert no na watimi ya ba behwe da bia ye ka kire mo enya Abrokyiremu nsem dwumadie nko na ye di o ye bibia bi o adwomto e wo ho enkomo e wo ho na afisem e wo ho ye wo sports e wo ho na mesua hunu dwumadie ni so health talk oba be kire ya pomudin mu nsem ti mesre se bomodian se obe subscribe amaye. So Chanti, before you leave, what is your final advice to we Ghanaians that we've traveled abroad? We still want to practice our culture and at the same time, stay in this country, and that is what is causing us a lot of problems, issues. What advice will you give us?
To educate people. I feel that it's important that everyone understands that England is not as it used to be. We are a multicultural country, and actually we need to learn more about diversity. We sit there and we do our different courses and we learn very textbooks example about diversity, but actually you really know from someone's experience. You really know from hearing it firsthand. What we learn on through a book and with pen and paper is not the same as what someone has lived. So I think for change to really happen, for it to really matter to others, you have to educate them. You have to make sure they know about different cultures, because it's very easy for people to assume, it's very easy for people to judge, and it's very easy for people to discriminate.
Thank you. Mamiti, do you have something to catch Shanti?
God bless you. We will call you again because
please do.
It's too much for us, especially we Ghanaians. I come from Ghana, so I will say Ghana. We need more education program like this. So we'll call you again. God bless you. Thank you so much.
And you. God bless you. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Chanti, thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Have a good evening.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And you.
Bye.
Bye.
Mamiti.
Nanayere.
And one waka no say o see sua de. Unti means na obi krom wabra won sua ne krom ade o.
Enya asem ketewa nana. Enya asem ketewa kra ye besere because eya na enye easy. Enye easy. Kroi mu wa anya adwuma. Wonkoma. Wo ye adwuma nso a. Eno nso ya asem. Disem kola aka wo ho a. Nana, obeye den.
Mamiti, chiadofo em se na de dodo na na yaka. Chiadofo, me fa adwumadie yi, emre wieye.
Ne da se. Me chia obi a wo tie ye bia. Na che se we part of us. Nti me chia obi a. Ya da mase, se mo hwe yen. Munkoso anhwe yen. Video ni yenya yawie a, eda so da ho. Wa enya ho na ochina. Unya ho kra san akone kohwe biem because enedwumadie ni de ebeboa ye nyina, especially ye wo kromu a ye si nana ye bewui awo isu ni asem emu batitie ye ntumi so nkase ya ba kromu a ye beji ye menti ye ho awo de wo se ye wo but wo se ye sua ho ade because me a make say me nye perfect ati a me ye number 1 but Nana enye easy. Kromu ankola so minim se mo kana ye omo no na. Omo so ye din papa compared to Ghana.
No credit.
Omo so din nti no. Yesire nyame so omo aye. Ye ntumi ntiti ye mani yi a ye ne aban enya asem na nhira emra ye so. Na Abrokyirehemaa ha de. Se bia mi nya ika. Em se stress ni so. Eye number 1 nana. Enye easy my parents kra nti yesire nyame so omoaye manuesi michi adofo nyina
yo mamiti yeda nyame ase wode adwumadie na ba wieye yeda hwefo yeda masio se muni ho anka yensu ye ni ho se ne ada bia ye ba moji ye fe so no ye fe dodo monkoso na monkrekre mu sa na ye se Abrokyiremu nsem dwumadie yede ye adesua o adesua ne pesi nyina yesua sanse yase ye free ye man so abetena ha dia wo si etimi sua de se ne bia betimi atena kroyi mu ama ye ni age enenso so ye da etiefo ne ahwefo nyina ye da mase ye producer ene wabo adwuma papa na me se producer be hwe no de wa seti enwum na ma ye enche bia ye de adwumadie no ba awieye enti producer wadaro ma mesro hwe ne seti menwum no ma ye na ye mfa ye adwumadie no emra awieye ene adofo mo amode mo comment ba ye nyina ye da mo nyina ase mo ya ade mama adwumadie no akoso na ye ka no yesre mo ase mo nkoso na mo nhye adwumadie yi ma ye mo hwa Richmond Media afi ya na yaba enso se ne amosi aso ye ni agi bebre enu nti ye da mo ase se ene mo ba be ka ye ho a ye ni mo edi se adwuma yi enti ye producer ye da ase mo amode mo comment ba ye nyina ye da mo ase na se ne sai ene mo ye mo ma ba
we are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know we will get there. Ti-bum, ti-bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum. Ti-bum, ti-bum, bum, bum. We will